What if I told you the world's most powerful financial company isn't a bank? It isn't a government. It isn't even a trillion-dollar tech giant. Yet every single day, it helps manage more than $11 trillion. That's more money than the economy of almost every country on Earth. Millions of people unknowingly invest through it. Governments seek its advice during financial crises. CEOs pay close attention to its decisions. But outside Wall Street, most people have never even heard its name. Its name is BlackRock. Spend just 5 minutes on the internet and you'll see people claiming that BlackRock owns everything. Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Google, Amazon. Some even say it secretly controls the entire world economy. But is any of that actually true? Can one company really control trillions of dollars? Does BlackRock own the world's biggest corporations? Or is the real story even more fascinating than the conspiracy theories? To answer those questions, we need to go back more than 3 decades, to a time when BlackRock didn't exist, back to one financial disaster that nearly destroyed a man's career, but instead gave birth to one of the most powerful investment firms in history. This is the story of how BlackRock quietly built a financial empire, and why understanding it might completely change the way you see money, investing, and power. The story begins in the 1980s on Wall Street. Back then, one man was quietly building a reputation as one of the smartest bond traders in America. His name was Larry Fink. He wasn't born into wealth. He wasn't building a technology company. He was simply trying to become one of the best investors on Wall Street. His career took off quickly. Fink joined the investment bank First Boston, where he helped pioneer a new financial product called mortgage-backed securities. At the time, it was considered one of the biggest innovations in finance. The business grew rapidly. Investors loved the idea, and billions of dollars flowed into the market. Larry Fink became one of Wall Street's rising stars. Then everything changed. One mistake caused losses of around $100 million. Overnight, the rising star of Wall Street found himself facing one of the biggest setbacks of his career. For many people, a failure like that would have been the end. But for Larry Fink, it became the beginning. The loss taught him a lesson that would shape the rest of his life. Markets can be unpredictable. Risk can destroy fortunes in a single day. And most investors didn't truly understand the risks they were taking. Instead of chasing bigger profits, Fink became obsessed with one question. What if there was a better way to measure and manage risk before disaster struck? That simple idea would eventually change the investment industry forever. In 1988, Larry Fink and 7 partners founded a new company under the Blackstone Group. They called it BlackRock. At first, almost nobody paid attention. It was a small team with a simple mission: help investors manage money while understanding risk better than anyone else. It didn't promise overnight riches. It didn't make flashy headlines. Instead, it focused on something far more valuable: trust. And over the next 3 decades, that trust would transform BlackRock from a tiny startup into the largest asset manager the world had ever seen. From the very beginning, BlackRock understood something that most investment firms didn't. Making money is important, but avoiding catastrophic losses is even more important. That's why the company invested heavily in technology, instead of relying only on human judgment. Over time, BlackRock built a powerful risk management platform called Aladdin. Despite the name, Aladdin wasn't designed to grant wishes. It was designed to answer one question: what could go wrong? Every day, Aladdin analyzes enormous amounts of financial data. It helps investors understand how different events could affect their portfolios: rising interest rates, inflation, market crashes, geopolitical conflicts, even unexpected economic shocks. Instead of reacting after a crisis begins, BlackRock wanted to prepare before it happened. That approach made the company different. As more institutions searched for better risk management, they turned to BlackRock. Pension funds became clients. Insurance companies followed. Universities trusted the company with their investments. Governments and central banks also began seeking its expertise. Then something remarkable happened. BlackRock wasn't just managing money anymore. It was managing money for some of the world's largest institutions. And with every new client, the amount of assets under its management kept growing. billions became trillions. Today, BlackRock manages investments on behalf of millions of people around the world. But here's something many people misunderstand. That money doesn't belong to BlackRock. It belongs to pension funds, retirement accounts, businesses, governments, charities, and millions of individual investors. BlackRock's job is to manage those investments according to its clients' objectives. That distinction is incredibly important, because managing trillions of dollars is not the same as owning trillions of dollars. But even without owning that money, BlackRock had become one of the most influential players in global finance, and its biggest opportunity was still waiting just around the corner. The world was about to experience the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression, and that crisis would transform BlackRock forever. In 2008, the global financial system came dangerously close to collapse. Banks failed, stock markets crashed, millions of people lost their homes, their jobs, and their savings. Fear spread across the world faster than anyone had imagined. Some of the biggest financial institutions in history were fighting for survival. As governments searched for answers, they needed more than money. They needed expertise. And that's where BlackRock entered the spotlight. Because of its reputation for understanding risk, governments and major financial institutions asked BlackRock to help analyze complex assets and navigate the crisis. For a company that had spent years quietly building trust, this was a defining moment. BlackRock wasn't just another investment firm anymore. It had become one of the most respected names in global finance. The years that followed changed everything. Investors wanted stability. Institutions wanted better risk management. Pension funds, insurance companies, and sovereign wealth funds entrusted even more money to BlackRock. Its assets under management grew at an extraordinary pace. Then came another game-changing move. In 2009, BlackRock acquired Barclays Global Investors, including its famous iShares ETF business. The acquisition instantly made BlackRock the world's largest asset manager. It wasn't just managing more money. It was helping millions of ordinary people invest through low-cost index funds and ETFs. Instead of trying to beat the market, many investors simply chose to invest in the market itself. That strategy proved incredibly successful. Year after year, more money flowed into BlackRock. Trillions of dollars. Not because BlackRock printed money, not because it secretly bought the world, but because millions of people and thousands of institutions trusted the company to manage their investments. By the end of the decade, BlackRock had become something almost unimaginable. A financial giant whose influence reached nearly every corner of the global economy. But as its influence grew, so did the questions. If BlackRock manages investments in thousands of companies, how much power does it actually have? And why do so many people believe it controls the corporate world? This is where the story becomes confusing. Open social media, and you'll find thousands of posts claiming that BlackRock owns Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Amazon, Google, and almost every major company on Earth. At first glance, it sounds believable. After all, BlackRock appears among the largest shareholders of many of these companies. But the reality is far more complicated. When people invest in an ETF, a retirement fund, or an index fund managed by BlackRock, that money is used to buy shares on behalf of those investors. In other words, BlackRock manages the investments, but the money belongs to its clients. Think of it like this. If a bank stores your money, the bank doesn't suddenly become the owner of your savings. The same idea applies here. BlackRock acts as a manager, making investment decisions according to the objectives of the funds it oversees. That's an important distinction, because managing shares is not the same as personally owning them. However, that doesn't mean BlackRock has no influence. As one of the world's largest asset managers, it votes on shareholder proposals for many of the shares held in its funds. Those votes can influence decisions involving corporate governance, executive pay, environmental policies, and long-term business strategies. When BlackRock speaks, corporate leaders pay attention, not because BlackRock controls every company, but because it represents the investments of millions of clients around the world. That influence has made BlackRock one of the most closely watched financial institutions on the planet. Supporters argue that the company encourages businesses to focus on long-term growth and responsible governance. Critics argue that no single asset manager should hold so much influence across so many companies. The debate continues. But one thing is beyond debate. Whether people admire it or criticize it, BlackRock has become one of the most influential institutions in modern finance. And as artificial intelligence, clean energy, and new technologies reshape the global economy, BlackRock is investing in the future right alongside the rest of the world. Today, the world is entering a new era. Artificial intelligence is changing how businesses operate. Robotics is transforming factories. Clean energy is reshaping entire industries. And every major innovation needs one thing before it can grow: capital. This is where BlackRock continues to play a major role. When pension funds, institutions, and individual investors put money into BlackRock's funds, that capital can end up invested across thousands of companies and industries, depending on the investment strategy. From AI infrastructure to renewable energy, from healthcare to semiconductor companies, BlackRock helps connect global investors with businesses seeking long-term growth. But the future won't be easy. Governments around the world are paying closer attention to large asset managers. Regulators want greater transparency. Politicians continue debating how much influence firms like BlackRock should have over corporate America. Competition is also becoming more intense. Companies like Vanguard and State Street continue competing for the same investors. While new financial technologies are changing the way people invest, BlackRock knows that staying on top won't be easy. Just as markets evolve, the company must evolve with them. And that's exactly what it has done for more than 3 decades. From a small Wall Street startup to managing more than $11 trillion on behalf of its clients, BlackRock has repeatedly adapted to a changing world. Its story isn't just about money. It's about understanding risk, earning trust, and making decisions that can shape the future of global investing. But perhaps the most surprising part of this story is that, despite its enormous influence, BlackRock remains one of the least understood companies in the world. And that's why so many myths continue to surround its name. So, does BlackRock control the world? Not exactly. The internet often turns complex financial systems into simple conspiracy theories. But the real story is both more realistic and more fascinating. BlackRock didn't become powerful by secretly buying every company. It became powerful because millions of people, pension funds, governments, universities, and institutions chose to trust it with their investments. That trust created scale, and scale created influence. The more assets BlackRock managed, the more important its decisions became. Today, when markets move, investors often watch what BlackRock is doing. When CEOs plan for the future, they know one of their largest shareholders may be funds managed by BlackRock. When governments discuss financial stability, BlackRock's experience is often part of the conversation. That's influence. But influence is not the same as absolute control. No company, not even BlackRock, can control the global economy on its own. Markets are shaped by millions of investors, thousands of businesses, central banks, governments, innovation, and unpredictable global events. BlackRock is one of the biggest players in that system, but it is still only one player. And perhaps that's what makes its story so remarkable. Without selling smartphones, without building AI chips, without creating social media, BlackRock became one of the most influential financial institutions in modern history. A company that quietly sits behind the scenes while trillions of dollars flow through the global economy every single day. History rarely remembers the people working behind the scenes. We celebrate the companies that launch revolutionary products. We admire the CEOs who stand on stage. We remember the brands whose logos we see every day. But some of the most powerful companies don't need the spotlight. BlackRock is one of them. It doesn't build smartphones. It doesn't manufacture AI chips. It doesn't create social media platforms. Instead, it does something far more important. It helps move the capital that allows those companies to grow. From retirement funds and pension plans to universities, governments, and global institutions, BlackRock has become part of the financial system that powers the modern world. That's why its decisions are watched so closely. Not because it owns everything, but because it manages an extraordinary amount of money on behalf of millions of investors. And that's the biggest lesson from this story. Real power isn't always about owning the biggest company. Sometimes, it's about becoming the trusted partner that everyone depends on. Whether BlackRock becomes even more influential in the future or faces stronger competition, one thing is certain: its story has already changed the history of global finance. So the next time you hear someone say that BlackRock secretly owns the world, remember the truth is far more interesting. It doesn't control the world, but it has helped shape the financial system that connects it. And in the 21st century, that kind of influence is powerful enough on its own. If you enjoyed this documentary, make sure to subscribe, because the biggest stories in the world are often hiding in plain sight. Thanks for watching.